And then the actress said to the bishop, "It's a oh." We're live. Welcome back, people. Gary is in the dark. He hasn't got any power today. So I'm playing Mother, and we have Ian and Mark. And Ian's got some great stuff for us today. Go ahead, Ian. Tell us all about it, mate.
Right. Well, I was going to cover the Dublin drone. But I've tried something we've never tried on here before, which is trying to prepare a video in advance, because I often talk about Twitter and what's going on social media, and there are a lot of people that'll be watching this that don't have Twitter, so they have no idea what we're talking about. And often people say, "Can I see a link? What's going on?" So what I've tried to do here is gather the stuff from social media and other sources and explain what's going on, and we've got that prepared as a video. So if you're able to start that, Bruce. Yep. It goes on for about
hopefully we'll get audio. I'll start it now and see what happens.
On the Dublin Airport alleged drone. So this is an ongoing saga. So the airport is saying that we're occasionally seeing this drone that's causing us to divert flights. Yeah, it can't describe the drone, so we haven't got, is it fast, is it slow, is it large, is it small, what colour is it, how are you seeing it at night, and so on. And there's no camera shots, there's no video, so it's quite an odd situation. Meanwhile, the airport is gaslighting politicians and the press by saying it has a detect system, and this is really where it all falls down, because anyone that knows about counter drone knows that the word counter drone means you have a system which can be detect or it can be detect and jam. They are not two separate things. The airport's trying to present them as two separate things, because what it's actually done is it's bought a cheap system. So it's likely bought the DJI Aeroscope, which is an entry-level system which is used by the police in the UK, for example.
I'd buy that for $1.
Obviously, police budgets are, they're not that significant, so they have to have an affordable system. With an airport, you don't have the same excuse. So really what's happened is they bought a detect system, a counter-drone system still. It is not different. It just relies on it being certain brands of drones. It has to be a range of DJI drones, and those drones actually put into the packets that they transmit the details about the drone. So it has the GPS location of the drone and also the pilot. I think it has the model of the drone and other information in there as well. So you've got, quite a wealth of information about the drone. So they're seeing what they believe is a drone, and it's not appearing on the system. And rather than tell the press and just own up that actually they can't see this drone, they're trying to put this narrative of, yeah, we can see it, but the whole reason we can't do anything is because we can't jam it and bring it down, which is horseshit. If you had a system that could detect it, you'd know where the pilot was and you'd just be going across and arresting him. That's the easiest, safest, most common sense option. So there's even this narrative trying to say that Gatwick works in a way where it just jams drone, which again, it's not true. Back in 2018, the MOD even prohibited the use of jamming or kinetic weapons against the drone. They didn't want the collateral damage. If you actually cause a drone to malfunction, it's unpredictable. A drone, if it malfunctions, it can actually go off at full throttle. So, it could fly straight across, a main road. There could be a car there, it swerves, there's an accident, someone could get hurt, someone could be killed. And you've then got the liability of that. And then the funny thing with that as well is you can even have the drone where it isn't actually going to cause any harm, and then you've actually jammed it and you've caused it to cause harm. So you can actually end up creating a far worse situation than you're starting off with. Now, when they go and buy the proper system, which is clearly what they're going to do, is they will have a decent detect on that. So it will know where the drone is, it will know where the pilot is. I'm hoping they don't even use the jammer, but the jammer's being used as the narrative to trick the press, into saying that, yeah, we could do something about it now, but we can't do it because we can't jam it. It's not true, not true, not true. Meanwhile, Michael O'Leary of Ryanair, he's been quite funny. He's been going on the narrative of shoot it down, making out, you get these things really cheap, blah, 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 doesn't know what he's talking about. And it was particularly funny as he referred to it as drone strike. So I think he's been watching too many Michael Bay movies.
From these drone strikes. Do
you like the Elton John song Rocket Man?
Do something useful.
Well, I only bring it up because it's you. You're the Rocket Man.
An event that was particularly comical in the recent days that underlines the dishonesty of the airport is local radio enthusiasts were listening on a scanner, so they've heard the communications between the airport and between the fire service there, and they were actually asking firefighters to look up the sky and look out for the drone.
Come back to props. Can you come back from DJI and just report it again once they launch it again?
And that just proves that you haven't got a proper detect system that knows where the drone is, so you wouldn't be having to ask people on the ground to look out for it. So there you go.
And there we go. So that's for a change, just a little video to show what's been going on. So just to recap over that, the airport was trying to say that we've got a detect system and now we're buying a counter drone system. So it was trying to say that the two things were different when we know that's not true. Basically, a counter drone system, the first thing it does is detect, and then is depending on what system you buy as a upgrade that you can then put effectors on, which are jammers, and you get, you can get different effectors, so you can maybe jam the GPS or jam the radio signal and so on. So they were trying to, it comes across that somebody at the airport really doesn't want to admit that, they haven't spent the money when they should have done. They don't have the right system, that some of those sightings could have been false because the system can't really know for sure whether they are or they aren't. So better to just muddy the water. But it just concerns me that one, because you've got politicians being dragged into it and they don't know that they're being told stuff that isn't correct. So really, I wanted to kind of address that and say no. Because if they've gone out and bought, so for argument's sake, if they've gone out and bought Falcon Shield to begin with and just got it in detect form, they wouldn't even be having this problem. The pilots would be arrested, they'd be in prison, and job would be done. But if you got a system like that and you wanted to buy a jammer, you can go and just get a bolt-on jammer. You do not have to go and buy a new system. You just buy that particular effector, and that's really what I wanted to address out there, because that really hurts me, because I just thought what you're trying to do is you're trying to muddy the waters. You're trying to confuse people. You're feeding off the fact that there isn't the understanding of the technology, and you're sort of using that to play silly games. And the funny thing is, actually reading tonight from what some of the reports say, because today I think they've agreed today to actually go and buy a proper counter drone system, but we don't know yet what they're going to buy, and they'll probably try and keep it secret. But these things normally come out in the wash anyway. But yeah, the airport's already sounding, we're not sure we actually want to run it. Can't the military run it for us, or can't the police? So actually, they've now put a rod for their own back, because they've said we can't. This is the thing as well that annoys me. It's this lie. They're saying you can't do anything with the detect only system, which is it's rubbish, because that's what you like to Gatwick are doing. They put the lie out that you've got to be jamming drones, and if they're jamming drones, they've got the financial liability of that. If they're sooner or later they're going to crash a drone that isn't that's there, it's legitimate. Someone's got the wires crossed, and they're going to a drone that was there legitimately in commercial operations going to get knocked out of the sky, or you're going to have something where actually wasn't, it might just be, someone that's ignorant of the law, which they shouldn't be by now, but let's just say, argument's sake, they're not actually doing anything malicious. Drone gets down, something goes wrong, and there's a consequence as a result of that. When the Ministry of Defence in the UK is that worried that it's saying we don't want to be using, just unless you've got an incident where there's terrorists and there's payload on there and it's going to cause some damage, and it's like case of, well, it's going to damage something anyway, there's nothing to lose. That's one thing. But when you're saying actually that this just could be someone maliciously flying about to disrupt, it's still a big leap to say, well, we have to knock that out of the sky. And again, the point has been made. It was by a commentator over in Ireland, which is true as well. It's you're not resolving the problem. If you're just knocking drones out of the sky and not getting the pilot, that pilot can just launch another drone and keep on going. And and they can still disrupt the airport just as much. What you should be doing is what Gatwick does now, which is you use the detect system, a very good detect system. You know where the pilot is, and you just go and arrest them. And hopefully they'll get wise to the way they should be doing it. But it's just infuriating that the airport's gone about this, and the politicians where they've just muddied the waters, and they've done it on a false narrative. And we still don't, as well, we're chatting just before the show went on there, and as Mark said, we still don't really know. There is a drone there. I do think for certain some of these are mistakes. And in fact, the Irish Times have been speaking to an insider. An insider said it's only the drone detect that they've got at the moment is only 75% effective, which means it probably is like we've speculated that it's Aeroscope. But there was also said that there was and it sounded like a police officer had seen something in the sky. They closed the airport down and quickly opened it again, realizing it wasn't out, and they don't want to even talk about that. So it seems actually there are mistaken sightings, and they know they're even mistaken sightings, and none of that wants to be discussed. And the odd thing is as well, one of the ministers was on the radio, and he'd implied that the arrests that they've done, so they've done 2 arrests historic, were from the counter-drone system, which begs the question, wait a minute, that doesn't add up because these are historic. So it means they've either had the counter-drone system running and it's kept some logs and they've had to go back through them, so they're not been monitoring it, or it means, and this is slightly sinister, that they detected these and they thought, well, it's only like a 250 gram, whatever, Mavic Mini or whatever it might be, and it looks like it's not coming towards the airport. Let's not do it about it. Let's just not worry. They might have looked at it and actually discounted it and said that's just someone that shouldn't be flying there, but let's just, scratch it off, forget about it. And then someone said, well, now we're under political pressure. We need some scapegoats. And someone's gone back through those that they've let off and just thought, let's go and, throw the book at them. So it looks, those are the only things that actually make sense. And with the lack of transparency and lack of just genuine talk around this, I don't think we're ever going to get the truth out of it. I just hope that we can actually genuinely trust a word that's come out of the mouth of what we've seen.
Well, at this stage, I'd like to welcome a regular guest to the stream, Gary, from the deepest, darkest recesses of Africa. Tell us, Gary, how's life in your part of the world?
Oh, it's absolutely splendid. We're back to 8 hours a day off. So we had 4 hours off until 7 o'clock this evening. Then we had whatever 7 till 11 is. I can't work it out now. And now we're without power again. So, yeah, electricity is a wonderful thing. I understand it's quite popular on the rest of the planet. We just don't have a lot of it here. That's good. We've been having biblical storms as well. Absolutely biblical storms. Big damage everywhere. Lots of flooding, all that sort of good thing. And I'm amused to see. Well, you've mentioned Aeroscope there, Ian. It's interesting that it's going. I think we all know that version 2 is just about to come around the corner, or early next year. And Flylogix, that company in England that went bust, that were a great big darling of future flight. So the market is wobbling, which is interesting. So that's me. How is everybody? I'm sorry I wasn't here at the beginning.
We're all good.
Yeah, I'm glad to see the video thing worked as well, because I wasn't sure if that would work with this platform.
That's
but that's
in
no
charge.
feature.
It wouldn't have worked if I was in charge. It wouldn't have worked at all. It worked very well, didn't it? It looked good from here. I wasn't driving it, so it's definitely Bruce's fault, not mine. No, it's very good. So what else are we going to talk about then? Let's go on. This thing in Ireland's just, and you've correctly pointed out, Ian, they just run time themselves in knots, and they haven't, they could have just said hands up, look, we think we got some problems. Some of these might be dodgy, but they can't go up making up stories about having the world's finest counter drone systems. It just doesn't work.
I mean, if they'd just simply said we've got the entry level system, we didn't foresee there'd be a problem, and now we're going to get a military grade system, no one would have any issue with that. Yeah. It's just all this silly nonsense about we can't manage an airport unless we've got a jammer. And you're thinking, no. Just be straight with people. Don't make up these silly tales, because you know, what are you going to do? You really are going to jam these, and then he's like, well, then how are you going to get an arrest? Unless they're hoping to get the locks off it.
They haven't thought about it. That's an easy headline.
Remote ID will fix all these problems. Trust me.
Oh, remote ID. It's interesting how everybody is jumping to the tagline that, oh, they must be closing Aeroscope down because remote ID is coming everywhere. And it's like, no.
Well, to be honest, that was my initial thought as well. To be fair, because it is slightly redundant, because that is the point of remote ID. But at the same time, I feel that I don't think it'll be that long. But I think it'll create that many issues that people will be hacking it. There will be hacked firmwares, and the people will probably even be prepared to pay for it to get that off. So then you're left with how do you detect them? So it might be that DJI think actually we will leave some of our own bespoke transmissions in there, so we can sell a Mark II Aeroscope, because it will pick those up instead. But I don't even know if that's a solution, because it was again, I have to keep referring to Twitter, which is annoying for people that are not on it. But there was a story that had come out of Russia, and they've actually got like a little training. So they've put this like training room aside, and they're actually teaching pilots. They've got pre-hacked firmwares that take the Aeroscope transmissions out and are teaching them to flash it and that. So that kind of almost the cat's out of the bag, you know, that now it's going to be standard process of, well, let's just not the Aeroscope out. So if that's going to happen, other than DJI thinking, well, we will just have to lock down our firmware more, and hopefully we can just keep one step ahead of the hackers, because they kind of got that problem anyway, with people selling hacks to take some of the, you know, like the height limits and stuff off. So they have to keep then doing something cleverer to make it harder for the hackers. So it might just be that we end up with this continual chase where if you're trying to hack it, you're stuck to particular models you figured out, and you're kind of one step behind. But I'm just not convinced with that either, because I think you just end up flashing a version and then not keeping it up to date afterwards. I mean, unless DJI's put some mechanism in where it forces you to do it. I don't fly DJI these days, so I don't know. But
friends don't let friends fly DJI. But it must be a sobering thing. If you've got a DJI drone, don't sell it, because the person who buys it off you may then do something nefarious, and you've activated it with your information. It could be guilt by implication until you can prove you weren't the person responsible. And the same with remote ID. When you sell something as remote ID, the thing that amazes me at the moment in America with the Avatar, the little drone, and they've got remote ID on that. Now, the interesting thing is that you're supposed to have some kind of link back from the remote ID information to the operator, the identity of the operator, right? So if you buy a secondhand Avatar, again, the remote ID information won't actually link that craft to you as a secondary owner. So how's this all supposed to be making people accountable?
Well, I imagine there'll be a factory firmware. I'll black that off, and then there'll probably be some activation procedure, and then you type to yourself.
You know, but if people don't want to, if people with bad actors, they will not do that. So effectively, bad actors are not going to be affected at all by remote ID. In fact, as this was pointed out earlier, it may make it easier for bad actors to do their thing, because if they configure their drone to look like an Amazon delivery drone, they can fly right past all the, that could be a bad actor thing. They've basically got a free pass.
Oh yeah, well, even better, you know, I think it will be the point where you will be able to just scan drones out in the sky and then effectively clone them. So you could actually just take a police drone, bang that on yours, and you're free to do what you want then. And that is pretty terrifying. But, you know, police fly standard stuff. So especially if they're flying like the Inspire still, cheap enough to get. If you've got to copy it by getting an M30, it's a little more expensive. But then again, if you're a criminal, that's not going to be an issue, is it?
Why don't they just make laws that make criminal activity illegal? That would fix everything.
Yeah, it is nuts, and it's lit up the counter UAS. Adam makes a good point there in the comments. So based RFCS always be susceptible to smart nefarious actors? Absolutely. And come on, let's face it, and Mark's no stranger to it. We all know many systems that can get around many of the counter UAS systems anyway, just by the way that you fly and get them there.
Ooh, I've had an idea. Raspberry Pi and a software-defined radio like this. Sell it to Dublin Airport as a counter UAS system for $3 million. Justification? Well, CAA spent $2 million to buy one of these for their registration database, and the SDR goes on top. There you go. You'd be rich, profit, money.
Well, I mean, and you can with the firmware that those Germans released, though you need a bit more than a Raspberry Pi because it needs to listen to 50 megs continuously. So just a little bit, but not much more. So, all right, 4 million rand of dollars, even, we don't have rand, $4 million, the more expensive. And perhaps we could chuck it in a case for that, and we could put some fake antennas on it as well, and a big red guarded switch.
To be honest,
if
it is that much money, it has to be an antenna that spins.
Yeah, and goes beep with a flashing light. But how much money is being made out of false narratives in the drone industry?
But end to end, false narratives of performance of aircraft, of performance of software, of just almost all the money. Perhaps it's I think it's, and it was Alex, if he's in the comments, he pointed out on, I think it was on LinkedIn, how did Flylogix manage to spend the 3 million quid that they got just at the back end of last year in VC money from I don't know if it's venture money, but money from BP. But I think back then they had 30 plus staff, so I should think that would start getting through that money quite quickly, as well as
now Skydio worth $2.4 billion.
What the?
Yeah.
I guess with Skydio, it's got the advantage over the, compared to drone manufacturers of the past, then that it's got military purchases, hasn't it? So and then you've got all the anti-China stuff going on there. So there's no one else really.
2.4 billion. That's $2,400 million.
Yeah, but then again, you look at Tesla and you look at there's something else. Oh yeah, EHang. EHang was priced initially where it was actually climbing more than Tesla did at the same time and stuff. So there's lots of ludicrous valuations about when you try and think, where's it going to generate the money to reach that. But I guess it depends how many years you're looking ahead. You think, if you think 10 years ahead, 25 years ahead, is someone thinking along those lines? I feel a little bit sorry that all the anti-China stuff didn't happen when 3DR were around, because they'd been in a perfect position to then
but back then the US was still saying there's no way China or anybody is going to be better than us, and they firmly believed it back in 2008.
And they made it difficult for 3DR to even export, which is what Philip had mentioned
ITAR, and we have the great hero of ITAR live with us this evening. Bruce and his cruise missile was the ultimate ITAR bluff, and Chris Anderson wouldn't have it. He thought that Silicon Valley was going to push through, stuff the regulations, it's coming, whether you like it or not, that's ridiculous. I can remember conversations about ITAR or having to say, do you know this exists? That's why the factory ended up in Mexico, etc., etc., etc. Amazingly, just over the border, isn't it? They could see they had the offices in California, and the factory was just over the border.
I have to say credit to them for finding a way around it, but it was kind of, I guess, disappointing they had to do that, and so the US has got to play catch up. But I just feel far more sorry for Europe and especially for the UK, because we haven't got anybody that's manufacturing drones to where we're actually doing our own components and software and so on. And you know, when you look to the computer boom of the 80s and just how we were at the center of that, I think we've really missed something there, and I don't see how we're going to ever recover. And it's pretty sad when you consider that, you know, as a country we've still got a lot of talent, but it's probably all going to go into autonomous vehicles and those kind of markets instead.
Maybe I'll go back.
One thing that did get me though,
closer.
as a step in news I have, because obviously I'm in the north of England where this is a new story and where it's just horrendous, but trains are so just utterly rubbish. It's hard to comprehend until you've done it. But we just have a completely broken transport system when it comes to rail. Yeah. And I just don't understand, why are we not automating rail? Because that's got to be simple. You know, if you've automated things that fly and things that drive, and you've got some on rail.
Greece is the word. Greece is the way we are feeling. Well, funny enough, Greece, yes. Guerrilla drones, we have covered Dublin, and Cliff he is commander, but no one knew any of the characters in Space 1999. It was so rubbish. But that is what's in the background.
It's an eagle.
It's eagle. That's right. I can't remember who the commanders was, but yeah, I was asked to talk to somebody about automating trains. Funny enough, on disused bringing back disused lines that be used then, but not for passenger transport, because then that would be to a higher standard of operation, but for cargo. So there is a flipping obvious idea, isn't it?
Are we talking steam-powered drones with wheels?
Absolutely, they would be steam-powered here. They'd have to be M0 pack, CQ. What does the UK manufacture? Quite.
So in America, there is a company, and what they do is they do like a train freight wagon, and it literally, the wheels and the chassis is all automated, and you just tell it where you want it to go on the network, and it can go from A to B, and it follows what it should do, and you can link them together, and they will literally be their own system, and these things just go. They don't need a driver, but that's being developed in America, this automated train system. It's quite interesting. And they're using Tesla battery packs to power them, of course, which is even crazier. There's no physical like diesel engine to generate the electricity that we normally expect. It's now, no, we just fill it full of batteries. It's a battery powered chassis. Off it goes. And yeah, it's incredible.
And I had thought to think of it more. I did a flight over one of these delivery corridors that's happening in the northeast of England, and I saw a disused. Made me think about it even more. It's right. The delivery flight goes out to sea to avoid all trouble in that. But when you look on a map, oh look, there's a disused railway. It's like, why wouldn't it? And it goes from across through every point that this thing's going to. So yeah, there needs to be a lot more joined up thinking around transport and how we move stuff around, doesn't it? And all in all, we need to have a good long chat with ourselves.
Well, it's like take these new urban mobility aircraft. You know, are the physics good enough? Is it there yet? Why are they not? Why have we not got the sky full of them already? What's taking so long to get
regulation? It's all down to regulation, over-regulation, lack of sensible regulation. That's what they'll tell you. If only the skies were clear of small and pesky toys, we'd be up there.
To be honest, I do think there is part of it with regulation, but I think with it's certainly the air taxi stuff, it's got to be there because, I think with China you see things, you know, potentially as corners cut in comparison, and you wouldn't want to see that in the US or in the UK. I think, you know, I think it's something to be really careful with. I don't really have a great deal of faith. The problem is, as we mentioned before, it's when you come into market, that's 10 years worth of software development. And when someone's bringing an air mobility thing to market in a couple of years, it just, for me, that's straight away.
Arducopter's already written. Arducopter's already written.
Well, yeah, we know that, but obviously you're not technically supposed to be using it. But yeah, I just worry, as we've discussed before, that, you know, there are potential corners to be cut there, and to be honest, that does no one any favour, because all it takes is basically it's your weakest link. whoever cuts a corner, if they have the crash, it still impacts everyone. So everyone that's done it, all the others that have done it by the book, they would still get that kind of negative public perception.
That Australian, the eluder airspeeder people, or whatever they might, 55 or whatever they're calling it now, they're the people that's going to have that crash.
Yeah, it looks like it.
I mean, I have to say with them, at least they have looked to change it around and do it a lot more serious. But I do watch their videos, and I still don't understand, because what they're trying to do is replace Formula One with the flying thing. But I just find it as boring as watching paint.
Yeah. I mean, it won't happen. They had Rocket Racing League, which would be much more exciting years before that, and that never took off, quite literally.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same as with the racing quad things. It just doesn't, even though I'm into drones, it doesn't interest me at all, and I don't find it appealing.
It's like the national paint drying competition. It's fun to do, but not to watch.
Yes, yeah.
What fun to dry your own paint? You're a drying expert.
It's probably more fun to watch your own paint dry than for someone else to watch it.
Yeah. And it's interesting, I'm finishing off my video on this whole flying taxi thing and drone delivery stuff, and I was just firming up some facts. Bezos announced that Amazon would be doing drone deliveries 10 years ago. He said they'd be doing them by 2015. It's now 2023, 10 years later. How many deliveries have they actually done? That gives you an idea of what the hype is versus the reality. And all these things, the eVTOLs, the AAMs, the drone delivery, the hype is just like an order of magnitude more than the actual delivery. And it will continue to be that way for quite some time.
Yeah, I see Bobby.
It is a Cylon, yeah.
There we are. Yeah. Oh dear. Right, I've just got to write Cliff's name down now. I think we can associate him with him and his tribe. So it's got to go on a list there somewhere. What's the Cylon? Oh, that's the one above your head, isn't it? Yeah, I see it there. Yeah. I see it.
You're not a very good geek, Gary. You need more practice.
Yeah.
No, I didn't like Space 1999.
I loved it. It was great.
Space.
And I was,
but
it was brilliant.
Which Battlestar is it from? What series, Ian?
That's the original, the 1980s version. I don't know if it even started in the movies. Yeah.
I've never been a Star Wars fan because I found those aliens that have got like big pointy noses and lots of fur. An advanced intelligent species wouldn't look like that because they wouldn't have the dexterity to operate the controls, and it's just like those things are what are they, evolutionarily irrelevant. So there's not a lot of science in Star Wars.
That's not meant to.
Yeah, you're right, Cliff.
Jumping back into drones for a second, just to
if you must.
Really?
It's because I forget otherwise. And it gives us a nice island link as well. I still think Mana Aero's done, it's doing all right. And I think for them,
having trouble near Dublin Airport though.
The bizarre thing is that they did do a graphic where they must have done it in the past, where they've done some deliveries around Dublin. And I did joke in it. I said, "You're not been trying to deliver burgers to any of the firefighters near there, have you?" But I think that they did it right they didn't try and overcomplicate it. Once you're trying to put too much AI in it and you're trying to be too clever, you bog yourself down because you can't have all that processing on board, and you don't really want to have APIs backwards and forwards if you can avoid it, because the moment something breaks, you can't get communication to a server, the craft themselves then become redundant until that's sorted out. And you just can't carry that much weight to have so much clever AI on board, I don't imagine. Especially with vision stuff, it's really intensive. So the simpler you can keep your engineering solutions, the more viable it is. And it also strikes me that food's not a bad one either, because we all, we think back, and I don't see the point of all the food companies we got, but we've got Just Eat, Uber Eats, all this. And they are making tons of money. There is a market there. So if you say you can get a burger to me by drone and it's going to be piping hot and it's not costing me any more money, I'm going to be more for it again, because I I
That's
know
the
with
thing.
the amount of onion rings I'm getting, the delivery driver's pinching some of them, and a drone isn't going to pinch my onion rings. So it's a done deal.
But if you order too much, half the delivery will come by car anyway.
Well, you just
Yeah.
Well, no, you get multiple drones.
No,
I
a
don't
ground
know. I don't
rover.
know what
It'd be a
swap C
ground.
means, Dan. Tell me what swap C means, and how far is middle mile? Is that 100 miles, or is it 2 miles, or is it 5? I'm not. People band about different points at which this is going to be successful, and to my mind, my banding about is 100 to 150 or 300 kilos, where it's starting.
We've already proven. We've proven that the drone delivery of food is uneconomic, because that guy in Australia that got a sausage from Bunnings with his Phantom, he got fined $3,000, didn't he?
He did. He did.
Well,
Sorry. Ian.
Well, I was going to say, we know that ground rovers are the better option. We know that ground delivery bots for last mile is the better option.
I'm not 100% convinced with them, because I've seen they might work in Milton Keynes, but I'm sorry, the moment they're going around Bradford, they're in for there's not going to be many of them left.
Yeah, but larger vehicles, you've got a guy driving the little I don't know, Honda Fit delivering pizzas for Domino's. Once you take him out of the loop, the price drops dramatically, and that's your solution, isn't it? Self-driving cars, just get Elon onto it. He'll fix it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they'll have hyper-tunnels, hyperloops between all the houses. It'd be fantastic. On Mars.
No, Elon won't fix it. What Elon will do is he will sell you the idea. You'll buy shares in it. He'll then sell all his shares. The price will drop down, and he'll just keep doing that. And then you'll just keep, and eventually you'll get upset by it.
Let's say you have an autonomous car, and most of the day you're sat at work doing a work thing. Why wouldn't a company hire your autonomous car to use it for deliveries during the day and make sure it's back at your workplace when it's time for you to go home? Because it's an asset that can be used if it's completely autonomous.
Taxi, it could be a taxi. You can have it as
anything. Yes, it could be anything. Yes,
could be anything. Brilliant.
Could be a white van with a trebuchet.
I cannot wait for that day when you buy that automated car, and then you can lease it out, and it generates you income while you're sat at home or you're sat at work. Imagine.
I don't think that'll even happen when the technology is at that level, especially because you see the way councils are acting and government. They're trying to stop personal car ownership. So I think what will happen in the end is these will be owned by the state.
Have you seen what they're doing with drones? Have you seen what they're trying to stop with drones? They want to stop everything.
Yeah.
The problem with car ownership,
they're already doing that. They're already bringing out something that they're not going to sell to anyone. They're going to run a fleet of autonomous slow speed vehicles in France. And that Bobby video I did see, and it was quite interesting. The
problem is it's always about cost, and the problem is it's always that last mile is the most expensive part of any delivery, because you can ship a 40-ton wagon to a warehouse, but then as soon as you want to send it out to the last mile, that's where it becomes painfully expensive. All these delivery companies, they bring wagon loads in, but it's just Daleks.
Just have people living closer to warehouses. That solves the problem.
The problem is with cars. The problem is with trying to ban all cars at the minute, and all this kind of gibberish about cars. Cars have given humans freedom to move about more, so we no longer only live in our towns. It used to be where you would live in your village, and you would rarely see anyone more than 2 miles away.
That's still the case for me.
We're going to go back to that if we're not careful, because if they continue to do this to us, all of a sudden our ability to travel will just become so limited. It'd be crazy.
We don't need to travel. The internet's taking care of that. Look at us. We're from all corners of the globe. We're sitting here talking. We don't have to travel to do it. Increasingly, people are being stationary anyway. They can teleconference this. They can do virtual reality that. They can Zoom another. They don't need. In fact, they want to stay in their homes. They don't want to go to work.
You see, that is so true. So they're going to change to pay as you drive. So cars will, London's a right mess. London is going to be a right problem. And I feel sorry for anyone that's got these high energy prices.
Bring back the horses.
Yeah.
Do you know what?
Uh,
It's not.
They'll
It's
come
not
back. They'll come back for agriculture. Mark my words.
Well, it'll be interesting.
It's a shame e-scooters are illegal, eh?
Yes. Now, any government that wants to make lots of money and wants to make lots of money really quick, they will create a licensing system for e-scooters, proper certified e-scooters that can be sold, and you go and get your license. You pay for an operator ID or a vehicle MOT, a little e-scooter MOT to say it's legal and all that. Highway code test. There's a bit of money to be made there. You could probably make 50 quid per person easily.
I've
millions.
got the Raspberry Pi here
Yeah,
for
the
the
Raspberry Pi.
registration scheme. There we can have that.
Yeah, there we go.
So yeah, there we are.
That's 3.5 million. It's got a case.
No, this is a 4 million, 4.5. It's got a case. And somewhere I've got a Pi Zero. We can use that for something else, can't we?
Well, but e-scooters would be a massive way. If any government wanted to make serious money very quickly, that's all they would do, and they'd make a fortune very quickly. And e-scooters would be so popular. I would love one. My city's intercity's 5 miles for me, 4 miles for me into main Lincoln. My God, if I could have an e-scooter, that'd be great.
You can have an e-bike.
The only thing I would say is don't keep the e-scooter in the house, because every time these things go up in flames, it's terrifying.
Oh yeah, well,
keep it at Ian's place.
Yeah.
Ian's got a USB charger especially for it. Charge for a single battery. Well, I mean that could be free, couldn't it? If it's solar.
You got to amortize the capital cost.
Yeah,
and the other thing is that maintenance is the killer, because if you're flying over property and houses and people, you're going to have a regularly scheduled maintenance to replace propellers at so many hours and motors at so many hours and everything at so many hours. Because if it falls on your head, who wants pizza in their hair?
Absolutely. I think it's really good that that Canada is proving systems for logging flight failures for us now rapidly.
I think that the fact that recreational users with their 250-gram drones have to keep a maintenance log, that's fantastic.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah.
Canada's leading the way with supplying the industry with data for these things. So thanks, Canada.
And when the weight of your log exceeds the weight of your craft, you must replace them both.
Absolutely. That's not being resolved. I joined a couple of Canadian RC forums just to keep an eye on what was being said, and I think the mood of the people might be described as angry.
It's interesting though, because I have some more background information. The people on social media are very upset and cross and angry, but they're not the majority of the population. Most of the MAC members are the grey-haired gentlemen that go out on a Sunday and sit down and watch everyone else fly while recounting the how wonderful the old days were, and who won't even know about this until they get the hard copy edition of the MAC monthly newsletter. So yeah, the empty vessel board. Not small people can make a lot of noise and disproportionately represent the state of things. So although there are a lot of people really angry, there's also a lot of people who A, don't know, and B, think doesn't matter, MAC will sort it out.
Wow, I wonder if you're right. Unfortunately, I feel you probably are, which it hurts me to think you might be right about something. But I
Had to happen one day.
Yeah, well, by joining these forums, I'm looking at a group that is more in touch. I've selected the wrong group to take opinions from. I've realised that now. Yeah, it's just such a shocking thing. It really is a shocking thing.
But New Zealand's falling into the same trap at the moment. I may be resigning from the National Model Flying Body because they've done exactly the same thing as MAC. Some types of model categories require flying higher altitudes and heavier weights and things that are not covered by the basic regulations. They would be in violation of the basic regulations. So they have applied for a Part 102 certification, which is like an exemption basically. It allows you to do more complex operations on the basis that you have met certain safety requirements. So it is similar to the MAC. Oh, he's fallen over. Similar to the MAC situation. Oh, no, you're close to the equator, aren't you, Gary? That's why. So the New Zealand Model Flying Body has done a deal with the devil, basically. They had to do it in order to continue to fly these models. But one of the things that I'm looking at the moment is I did that flight out of my house with my tiny whoop, and I got a warning letter from the National Model Flying Body because apparently here in New Zealand, we can fly BVLOS and we can fly FPV without a spotter. But to do so, we must comply with the 102 certification that they've got. And that would require me to have signage on the front of my property to advise people that it's dangerous to come in, road cones down the driveway to stop people coming in unexpected, and security on the gate to make sure someone doesn't walk over my 2-foot high fence, so that I could safely fly the drone I've lost because it's so damn small. Yeah, I've lost it again. I keep losing the damn thing, but so I can safely fly even something like this, and so, yes, technically there is a legal right to do that. Oh, also, I'd have to fill out forms online and apply for a certification to prove that I was competent to do so, to fly my 20 gram, to fly this toy in my backyard. All that would have to be done to fly this in my backyard. And okay, it's a process. It would legally allow me to do it. But the reality is, if you make the path to legality so complex and so burdensome, who's going to do it? And so I've been warned, because by flying in breach of the exemption or the certification that's been provided, I jeopardize that certification for all other members. It's not like I can say I'm flying using the benefits of my membership at a body-approved flying site or something, so I will follow all the rules. It's a case of no matter where I'm flying, I must follow all the rules because I belong to the body.
That's what that post was about. I see.
Yeah.
What
So
post was about now. Yes.
Yeah. So what I'm thinking is, if I want to continue what I'm doing, which is safe non-compliance at times, I will have to resign from the national body to avoid bringing the national body into disrepute and jeopardizing the rights of and freedoms of others. So it's because I'm Mr. Safety, I'm going to have my own ability to fly legally compromised even further, because it means I can no longer fly within 4 kilometers of an airfield, because when you're not a member of the organization, the benefit of your accreditations, your wings, no longer apply, even though you're flying exactly as you did before, cause reasons. So I would then again be an outlaw flying without the necessary qualifications to fly. It's like this. It shows you how, and we're talking about this. We're talking about this, really. Meanwhile, I couldn't fly this in my backyard without all those safety things, but I can. This has got 0.8 joules of energy when flying at 30 kilometers an hour, 0.8 joules of kinetic energy. However, I can kick a rugby ball, and if I kick it at 70 kilometers an hour, that has 180 joules of energy. And it's safe. I can kick the ball in my backyard all I like, and once it leaves my boot, I have no control over where it goes. But this is dangerous. Rugby ball, that's fun, despite the difference in energy levels and levels of control. And I can even juggle chainsaws in my backyard without any kind of permits or safety things, whatever. It is just, this absolutely signifies how ridiculous we've got in terms of these things. And because in New Zealand there's no sub 250 exemptions for anything, this is just as regulated as a Matrice or a 14.9 kilogram commercial drone. It's like, I give up. I give up. I'm not going to be subject to this kind of lunacy. And if I don't take a stand, nobody else will. So I'm going to have to take one for the team and just go totally outlaw again.
Well, we've often said it's all the nonsense, and it's getting harder by the minute. I think that's going to go back to where is it? Dan's point there. Gordon Russell, 80% or better compliance. That would be a really, really, really good start, wouldn't it? that would be crackerjack if it was done like that. It really would be.
And I should mention also that, like, we've been flying at the airfield for 20 years. We've never, Ron pointed out, he did actually put his fingers in a propeller once and had to go and get some stitches. That was the worst injury we've had, and that was his own fault. Yet on the weekends, as of today, someone's in hospital with an induced coma because there was a crash at the drag racing held at the airfield. And in the last 18 months, we've had 2 manned aircraft crashes resulting in the destruction of aircraft and 2 people hospitalized. Yet, basically, those things are less regulated than we are now. I mean, we'll work it out.
How is your erstwhile finger chopping buddy from the airfield?
Yeah, he's not very well because he's got a muscle wasting disease. So they're trying to get his house set up so he can come home and live in his home rather than living at hospital. And we're going to have to get a little trailer so we can tow him out to the airfield on his camping chair. But we'll be fine. We'll prop him up against the gazebo. He'll be fine.
Yeah, no, fair play. No, good. All right. Well, hopefully, yeah. Not that he'll be watching this, but where he get well soon, Rob. We look forward to seeing you propped Ron, New Zealand voice. You
Well, mind you,
probably
I won't be flying it. Probably won't be flying at the airfield anymore. Not that I did much anyway, because of my. I will be basically handing in my wings.
Yeah, well, that's that's not cool in many ways.
I don't blame Modifying New Zealand for it, to be honest, because they between a rock and a hard place. They've got to look out for the. And I know the president of Modifying New Zealand. He's a great guy, and the problem is that with this exemption, his name is on the certification. So if anything goes wrong, it's his neck on the line. So if a member does something bad, ultimately he's the guy who's going to be held to account. And I don't want to put him in that position. I don't want to put the national body in that position, just because I'm crusading for fairer regulation. So I will just. I haven't decided yet, but I probably will just step aside, and then I'm not going to cause any problems for the group of people that are happy with the situation.
What a time to be alive. What a time to be alive. So what else have we seen this week? It's Quarter in the news.
I'm trying to think if it's this week or if it was last week, and you might have already covered it, but there was the sentencing of the guy that had flown near the hurricane, wasn't there?
Yeah. What a plonker. In fact, I thought about him earlier when we were mentioning somebody we were mentioning about not staying in touch with no terms or something like that, or something near that. We've had this in this conversation time. But anyway, the guy's defense was there had been no changes to his app for the fly pass. His app didn't warn him it was just about to happen. And how a lawyer allowed him to say that when the NOTAM had been out for weeks, just talking about that fly pass is just nuts. I can't see how his lawyer allowed him to say that. But what a numpty to say his app didn't warn. Oh no, he said his data, his very bad reception where he was, so his app didn't warn. What nonsense.
Well, the other problem is if you say stuff like that, you would, as soon as you hear a plane, you would know to get the hell out of there. You know what I mean? You wouldn't hang around to film it. You would instantly drop your height and get the hell out of there. If you heard,
I think from what the story, the way I'd read it, that he did do. So once he saw it, he got out of there, but it was kind of too late by then, and he shouldn't have been there in the first place.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like to look down the high street now, I'd like you to look towards the Battle of Britain Memorial Flight, Royal Air Force Hurricane, Bell in 9. The guy would have been, the commentators would have been talking it up for 5 minutes before the chap arrived. I mean,
well, he was flying BV loss, wasn't it? So I don't know how far away he was.
I just happened to come across a place with about 6,000 people stood in the high street, and I thought I'd take my drone for a. What a numpty! I'm amazed he got away with as little as he did.
It was pretty lucky that he's, because the one thing I wondered, I thought, well, as he's the first case of this, will the book be thrown at him to make an example? So he was kind of fortunate that it wasn't, that it's just been a finance. Well, to be honest, I mean, it's not just a financial impact. So I'm going to say that.
Got community service as well.
Well, no, the suspended sentence does count because that counts as
but unpaid community work as well. It's 100 hours or something unpaid community work. That's in my case, that's worth millions.
Yeah.
And he gets a criminal record. He gets
a criminal record, and that could impact future employment potentially. Depends if it's sector you and what you're going for, but it wasn't soft, and no one wanted it to be soft either. So, but I think it probably, in the whole scheme of things, given there was no accident, it was probably right. The only thing I would like to know, though, just out of curiosity, because it's still true that with photographs it's down to angles and that, and how close was it?
Yeah.
And
I think about that today.
What the thing is that always gets me is when the police are happy to answer certain questions, and then you ask one question and they refuse to answer, and there is the one which I just said, and it's just straightforward, and I don't see the problem with it. I just said, you were looking at the flight pan versus his logs. What was the closest he got to it? And it's not an unreasonable question, is it? Because it looked like he got fairly close. I think probably the photos make it look closer than it was. But if you said, he got 10 meters away, I wouldn't be surprised by that. But I just always get concerned when there's no answer. And, it's like, was it a photo there and it turned out he actually didn't get within 100 meters or further? I just like to. I don't know. I always get a bit concerned when there's no answer.
Remember, he could never catch up with that hurricane. He could never catch up to it. So he must have been in position at some point to even capture this fly past or whatever he was doing. He could never fly to catch up with a hurricane. It just ain't going to happen with a Mini. It's just no chance. That hurricane's doing the other side of 100 miles an hour. He can only do maybe.
He was airborne waiting to to pan past as it flew past, but
he was.
I appear to be exactly in the same bit of sky as it wants to be.
Yeah, I mean, he was very lucky because all that hurricane had to be was 20 meters over one way, and the Mini would have been destroyed.
Well,
the
5,000 people killed, wouldn't it, Bruce? Something like that.
Yeah, well, that's the annoying bit. That was the most annoying bit from the reports from the police and everything else. 20,000 people could have died.
And did you notice I tweeted to BBC, can you please say whether that's a direct quote or whether it's a paraphrasing by your reporter? They wouldn't respond.
And that is quite important as well, because if it was a BBC over-egging it, that'd be bad. And at the same time, one we're good if the police were saying it either, because I think your issue, Bruce, which was correct, was they weren't saying there could have been an accident. They were saying there absolutely certainly 100% would have been with the wording that you used. And I think whilst we should hold people to account, especially in situations like that, we should also always do it honestly and say, because no one knows. Again, you would have to have your likes of a Shaw, and you'd have to get your 70-year-old jet, and you'd have to propel the drone at it. That's the only way anyone's going to know. And anyone saying anything else, all you're doing is speculating. And as you pointed out, Bruce, these things were built to be flying about with machine gun fire at them, and were absolutely blown to pieces, and still came back. So you do also have to say, let's just do the guy, you broke the law, but at the same time, just let's deal with it all in a just purely factual way. If for no other reason, then it's going to wind us all up.
Yeah. I mean, it's just
The thing though that did bug me was that there were a few and I don't really see these often, but there was like one guy, especially proper tinfoil hat, that was, well, the BBC have said it, so it's definitely a lie. Those photos are definitely photoshopped. And I said, but the guy himself admitted his guilt, apologized to the pilot. I put that, and he shut up at that point. But even though he'd shut up, he'd just come across that convinced that I still thought he's probably still convinced it's all like a conspiracy. So I was just a bit perplexed by that, because I just thought, no, I know I'm into my photography and that, and I don't. There's nothing that made me think there's anything untoward about those photos. I think it was just, it was very fortunate. To me, there's no benefit for a member of the public to be. Oh, that's interesting. I was going to say for me, there's no, there's no incentive for a member of the public to be manipulating photos, and you wouldn't risk it anyway, because then you'd be then done for wasting police time for doing something like that. So it just struck me that for anyone to just even be disputing it and being, believing it was a conspiracy, it's like, just take a step back.
No, the guy was there, and the multiple things he did that were a little bit crazy there over. But I know it's a tiny thing, but he just shouldn't be doing it. He shouldn't be flying. He just shouldn't do it.
It doesn't bode well for the UK's freedoms for sub 250 craft, does it?
No, and I see you talking in the chat, although it's hard to keep up with the chat and not knock my phone over and make myself go vertical. About those super quiet, super efficient, increase your performance by 9,000% propellers. It's such nonsense, and that video is terrible, isn't it?
The problem is
the MIT one with the way the audio changes. I don't know what's your well, I believe you must believe they're debunkable, Bruce, but what's your quick debunking of that?
Well, if you look at the way a propeller works, it has a helical pitch, The tip is at a lower pitch angle than the root of the prop because that gives you the same effective lift across the blade. But if you have the tips of two blades joined together, as you've seen in some of those things, there's a vertical edge. They've got a vertical edge. So effectively at that point, you have, to get to vertical, the prop has to curl up and increase its pitch right at the tip. So you're running into all sorts of inefficiencies because you're stalling the very tip of the prop. And perhaps the reason it doesn't make so much noise is simply because it's not spinning as fast for a given amount of power because there's so much more drag caused by the stalled tip. I don't know, and I've seen people, in fact, the best video to watch is one by Quad Mover. He's the guy that does a really fast line of sight quad flying. He's put those props on one of his quads, flown it around. You think, yeah, it's all right, it's pretty quiet. Then he puts I think it's a 5-bladed conventional prop on, and it's twice as quiet and much faster. It's just, there you go. It just shows you how this is probably a great idea in theory, but in practice, they've overlooked some things for the sake of convenience, I think, and that is that the tips will always be stalled.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's amazing. It'll die down. It'll be fun to track this one to see how quickly they go away.
I'm surprised we haven't seen the prop manufacturers throwing these things out there so they can get some extra sales.
I suppose to ramp it up very quickly because I reckon we've got another month and they're gone.
Yeah, people are 3D printing them. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So I was going to do it, but I wasn't going to 3D print the prop, just the hole in the middle, because that's going to be fine.
Yeah. You got the low noise holes, have you now? Got that bit sorted out. Very good. I wish I had consulted Bruce before I made the video.
They'll be able to use these on these new airborne mobility aircraft.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just a nonsense. But I think it's real use cases in boats, isn't it? Isn't that originally what they were made for?
I don't know. You're going to get a lot of cavitation with that tip, like it is. So you'd lose efficiencies. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, there we are. That Dr. Quads has got a great answer there. Look.
Yeah, the prop manufacturers wouldn't want people bitching about their crappy props.
Yeah, well, just the manufacturer. It's people that fly and claim that they can get 2 or 3% or 10% of performance because of the way they fly. It's just rubbish most of the time. You one yank at the stick and all that performance enhancement is gone.
And you've also got to ask yourself, why aren't we flying biplanes these days?
Yeah, well, I would.
You give interference between the two lifting surfaces. Your one's operating in the effect of the other. It reduces your efficiency overall.
And even those, I forgot what they called those. The ones where like a rhombic wing, isn't it, or something? They keep coming back every once in a while, don't they? It could be one of Ian's spaceships in the background, but they keep coming in and out of fashion. Yeah,
the theory is if you don't have tips, you don't have tip vortices, but it's not quite right.
Yeah. Comes as a massive sound and for submarines. Yes. Baby ape. I don't know what this. I don't know what a baby ape is. So, what other stories that we've been in the hour? Try and be good about being on the hour. What other stories have we seen?
Not a lot, really.
There's the push to move the 250 gram up to 1 kg in America. That's going to fail abysmally. I think they are making it on the assumption that it's all about safety, and it's not about safety at all. It's the only reason we have a 250 gram cutoff in most countries is because the regulators do not want to be seen to be regulating children's toys. Our regulators in New Zealand aren't that smart. We have no cutoff, but in every other country, imagine the furor, the outrage if kids had to register the little toy they got in the Christmas stocking for Christmas, and so they would like to have everything registered and with remote ID. So they're not going to lift that 250 gram limit at all, I think. Also, I'm really disappointed because I did my video and I said, don't do a copy and paste. Don't do it. It's not going to be as effective as doing individually written letters. I had, what is his name? The guy that works with Bardwell, I forget his name. Jeez, I'm getting old. Anyway, they've emailed me and said, can you do a video up to promote, our campaign?
Well.
And
I don't want to do that script.
No, I said I don't think it's a good idea to have a copy and paste. I've already stated it should be everyone writing an individual letter.
Exactly
Why would I support a campaign that I know is doomed to failure?
That's it.
Yeah,
that's what I said. But they're going to clip everyone's voices. Blunty, that's it. Blunty.
Yeah, Blunty. Yeah.
But they're going to clip everyone's voices so that we all say our word of it. I think,
Yeah, I said you can exert stuff from the video I've posted. I'm happy with that, but I'm not going to, because I've already stated why I don't think it'll work. And if you're going to follow that path, there's no point in me being a part of it.
I wish good luck to that. I do think if you were going to do that, I'd have gone in more for 499, and in part, or it was around there. I would have used the original Freedom of Information meeting minutes that came out. There was basically notes taken about everything that went on and what was said, and it was evident back then that the airline body was willing to accept somewhere around about 499. And if you actually went back and said, look, all this time's passed, even back then, this thing was kind of manipulated down to 249. I think you'd have a better argument for it, to be fair.
Yeah, but it's not safety. It's not about the safety.
It kind of is, but you could legitimately argue. You can say these are your meeting minutes. This is the science you use. It's all been debunked. You're the FAA. You now use Assure. This can be proven. If you approached it right,
when have they ever listened to fact and evidence? They brought out these regulations, these restrictive regulations, on the premise that these drones were going to bring down airliners and cause all sorts of things. Hasn't happened. We've got 10 years of evidence to prove it. They're not listening to that. They don't want to know about the evidence.
In the US, there must be voices of common sense and some pragmatism by the fact that Assure exists. And their science is used, so that for me counts for something.
They'll selectively use it when it doesn't contradict their own narrative. That's what these people, they have the consultants there to validate what they want to happen. But if the results don't validate what they want, they'll ignore them. And the other thing is that remember, the people driving this are the FPV Freedom Coalition and Flight Test. Both of those groups need more than 500 grams, because 5-inch freestyle quads are generally about 550 to 650 grams, and most of the Flight Test models are over 500 grams and less than a kilogram. So they're looking out for their own interests. This is being driven by self-interest. That's why nothing happened until now. It wasn't about the hobby as a whole. It was about what's in it for us. And so that's why they wouldn't go below the 1. Other people have said it should be 2 kg. And I might even agree with it, because if we look at Canada, where there's no prescriptive rules for sub 250 grams, there have been no incidents worth mention apart from, involving sub 250 gram craft. It shows that when given the freedom to make their own decisions about safety, the vast majority of people are responsible and safety focused. So the weight, just because you're flying a 250 gram drone versus flying a 1 kilogram drone, that will not change your attitude to safety. So therefore, the weight is irrelevant. We've proven that people have a good, responsible attitude to flying with sub 250 craft, and that would obviously, I'd see no reason why it wouldn't transfer to heavier craft if they were allowed to do that. So there's your safety case.
Well, just remember, in America, the only way that anyone will do any good in America, especially if you're going to try and go political, is they have to be as good as the NRA is. That's the only way. Is they have to become as good as the NRA. And that means getting politicians in your back pocket, spending lots of money, and that's the only way you'll change the drone rules. But, unless you go that political, no rules will change anywhere in the world, I'm afraid. It's all right just showing up and going blah, 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 safe, this, that, and the other, blah, blah. Doesn't matter. What matters, and this is the truth of it, is a bit of this in someone's back pocket by getting on their political campaign, bit of money into that campaign pocket. That's it. Anything else will not happen. It's immaterial. I don't care what anyone says, unless you go political and really deep and know who to hit. Forget it. It'll never change. And I'm sorry, but that's the truth.
Can anyone ask Skydio if they can just spare $1 billion and we can sort it out?
And it's just reality. I mean, Assure has proven that up to 6 kilos, a drone to do the golden shots to kill someone is extremely unlikely. Extremely. Assure have proven that. The aircraft flex. The aircraft have, without realizing it, built-in buffer zone. They have the crumple zones, if you like. It's proven. Doesn't matter if it's a Mavic 2. Doesn't matter if it's a Phantom 4 Pro. These aircraft, if they fall out of the sky and hit you, yes, they're going to really hurt. And I mean, they're seriously, it's going to hurt. But Assure have proven it. The 250 gram twaddle of shrapnel, and we know it's twaddle that they've used, is just pure BS. You know, if they had used the assured data, I'm sure the 250 gram rule would be like a kilo. Maybe
yeah, I mean, unfortunately, none of that existed back then, and that's the problem.
No,
it's historical.
Because Assure, well, Assure did the tests quite a while ago, didn't they? It's not.
Yeah, but it's going back far further than that.
Yeah.
Wasn't it some French guy with a cannon?
Yeah.
The point is, right?
Or a Nikon.
So anyone wants to change any rules in any country, the only way it's going to happen is get a politician in the back pocket to sponsor the campaign to change it. And you'll need to do more than one. So America, your rules aren't going to change. I'm afraid, suck it up.
But therein lies a route to success, because these politicians, while they're on the gravy train, they know that if they're not re-elected, that gravy train's over. No one's going to slip money in their pockets when they're not in office. So ultimately, the best approach, I believe, is through the population, through the people. If enough people say, hey, you're killing this hobby, wonderful hobby, I enjoyed it when I was a kid, they put pressure on the politicians. That's the only way you're going to see change. We don't have the money to directly manipulate politicians, but we do have the ability to manipulate the public's perception of what we're doing. And I think, because, you know, I've said, first of all, we should get a distinction drawn between the traditional hobby of model aircraft and camera, you know, GPS guided, computer controlled camera drones. And people said, oh, no. You got to think ahead, strategize here. When you're fighting a battle against a much bigger opponent, you don't try and take them down with one blow. You get small victories, take the easy victories first, the easy low-hanging fruit, and you build on those. So first of all, you say, let's separate out model aircraft. 80 years of history showing they're very low risk and they're not the problem that you're dealing with. And then the regulators say, okay, we'll separate those out. And this is why they haven't separated them out, by the way. We'll separate them out. And then you can say, okay, right, we've had, in the last 10 years, we've had 2, I think, deaths from the use of traditional model aircraft and 0 deaths from multi-rotor drones. So multi-rotors are equally safe. So you can now apply those rules to the multi-rotors.
I see, Bruce, I want to agree with you. I really do. However,
never agree.
Right?
No, it's bad.
But the problem is, right, the NRA have proven that what you've just said is complete twaddle, right? Because they have these movements in America for more gun rules, right?
I have movements here.
Right? And the NRA come along, who have more power than the president of the USA, right? They come along and go, you ain't touching our rules. And that's it. And the rules do not change.
But they also have the protection of the Constitution, the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms.
So here's the thing about the Second Amendment, and Americans, I won't like me for this. It's called an amendment. It means it can be amended, but they do not understand that, you know, and it's a beast. And this is the thing. You can't, I'm really sorry, but I don't think the rules will now change. I think what America's got. I think what the UK's got, they're kind of going to stay the same. And nowadays, when you deal with our CAA, you now get a response back saying your ops manual doesn't meet UK EU regulation 917-214, Article 60, Article blah blah Part E. And you just look at it and you go, I'm sorry, what? And I have to go and Google it to find out. I just can't. I can't cope with all the rules anymore. It's just nuts.
The one thought I've got with the US, though, is I do think, especially with the way things have changed, and you look at Skydio getting the military contracts and so on, I think they realise that they have damaged their own industry over there. So that in itself might change regulation and minds over time, because trying to build smaller drones does create you lots and lots of challenges. So it makes it kind of harder for their own industries as well. And given their industries now, they're being more positive about them. If those, if the likes of Skydio then started having those conversations, they may well be able to get some flex. But I don't see it happening soon. But I do. I think one day we've got to see a little more flexibility on it, just for the facts of science.
I still have a man with a red flag walk in front of my truck.
I'm glad you mentioned that. Sorry, and after you.
Sorry, but drones are just going to get drones at sub 250 now. Look at the Mini 3. It's bonkers, right? Technology will get better and better. You know, that's up 250 now.
Yeah, the
You
trouble is,
imagine it in another year or another year. That 250.
there is that, but it can only go so far. We've got the. It's just plain physics. You know, when you're in windy weather,
close, aren't we?
250's too small. It's more of an issue. You've also got camera sensors. There's physics around those. You know, the small pixels for that size will always mean poor nighttime performance.
This is what they said when I bought my first Valve computer, and now look at them.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, we've not got anywhere yet with sub 250. Remember, it's only sub 250 has only been around for 3 years or so. So here's the thing.
Sean's right. I saw Bruce mentioned it, and Sean's right. And it was the Danish that actually, and it wasn't bacon. It was a number of slices of bacon. No, it wasn't. It was It was the Danish test range.
If Sean wants, just for Noe, I've got the freedom of information from the US. I've got the whole minutes around the pick of it. So it went over a few days. And it was Google Wing that had pushed that, although really the FAA kind of wanted it to end up round 250 anyway. The Pilots Union wanted it to be equivalent to what a Parrot drone was, which then was around about 499. So if people have pushed enough, I think that they got that. And DJI were actually, and this is why I think Patrick is too tough on Brendan and co. They were trying to push for around 2 kilograms, and then it was like, because there was, you had the Google Wing and that were pushing other way. They then were trying to compromise at 1 kilogram. 3DR, unfortunately, by the looks, were completely and totally useless. If they'd gone and sort of sided more with DJI, there might have been a chance there, but really, it was all DJI arguing for some more flex on the way, and really everyone else just caved in and agreed to this 249 with this. And I don't think anyone had looked at the science that was being presented back then. I think there was probably only DJI that had an idea, but it was really, really bad science. And DJI did do a white paper on it explaining it all, but I mentioned this before, but it was ludicrous. It wasn't just that it was shrapnel from a bomb falling.
No,
the
wasn't that.
The algorithm included that it was a nuclear war. There were no hospitals, so you couldn't get a hospital treatment for your wound. So when the shrapnel went into you, even if it was relatively trivial, the consequence at the end would be death. So this was the whole thing that went into it. So you couldn't have had a more stitched up piece of science to use against drones. And unfortunately, that was the model. And it's only until we've ended up with the Shore that we've actually, we've now got proper science out there that hopefully more regulators will take notice of. And eventually one day we'll end up with there's a lot more common sense and pragmatism, fingers crossed.
And it was just a random number they plucked out of their backsides and said grams, and that confused the Americans. They don't understand metric.
Well, and before that, the chap who was in charge of the AUVSI, so we're talking 2008, 2009 now, he pushed for 1 kilo, 2 kilo, 3 kilo, 4 kilo, 5 bananas, 6 bananas, 10 bananas more. But the reason he did that was, it's because it fitted their range. Oh, that's right. I forgot to mention, he worked for AeroVironment, and it fitted their range of stuff exactly. So that was the conversation before 250 got about, and it did look like 1 and 2, and was going to be on the cards. But as we know, the rest is history. But yeah, this narrative that it's come from the shrapnel thing that's started happening in the last couple of weeks has amused me, because I know that's not. I'm pretty sure it was a Danish test site.
No. I think there was 2 pieces of science pointed, but that was one of them. So the shrapnel thing was definitely in there. It's I think that's captured in the the minutes and whatnot. But that was definitely part of what.
But the bottom line is, it doesn't matter where any of it comes from. That ship sailed a long time ago. Loads of ships. We're all chucking rocks at the 1 kilo ship that's chugging away from us now, and although it's all in the rear view mirror, all this stuff. Nobody protested at the time.
And the trouble is, it's a shame it wasn't noticeable, because even I didn't understand where everything had come from, and that it just shows that bad regulation in one country, other regulators and other countries copy it. So, we've ended up with that as the law here, the 249 and around the world. And I never thought that would happen. I would have thought that each country would still look at it using their own science and experts. But it seems like so much of this, if you're seen as credible, so the FAA is obviously seen as very credible, it's you make a decision, and then there's just this global assumption that you must have done that properly and gone through a proper process to get there, not realizing that often that isn't the case at all. And we're still, to this day, we've got that nonsense going on. And that's why I think it's important that we do all have a bit of a, even though we might not understand it inside out, and that'd be too daft to expect anyway, but I think it is good to have a little bit of an idea of what's going on in other countries. And that's why it's good with this show that you often cover those aspects, because all it takes is just one country to make a daft decision, and it's surprising. It might take 5 years, but that decision doesn't half manage to move round and then become a global issue.
The good ones don't travel nearly so quickly or as far.
Yeah, true.
It's going to be interesting to see how many years it takes to undo the nonsense to allow model aircraft flying for youngsters. I don't care about us old duffers, but for youngsters to start happening and continue, and for commercial drone ops to operate safely, or not. They are pretty much safe all the time. What do I mean? To operate with less confusion and more plain English regulations. 2023 is the year of the enforcement. Oh, you reckon, Sean? Is that what you reckon? Lots of cases coming. Oh dear. That's not going to be great, is it?
That's why the model aircraft community has to step up. Man fine for flying drone, at airports one thing, but man fine for flying toy airplane in park, that's a whole lot different.
Well, I think if there's a lot of cases coming, I bet they're all multi-rotor related, I'm afraid. Sadly, I do see that. And I personally, in a minute, it's like, I don't know if I will renew my PDR A01 this year in the UK. I think this year I will not be renewing, and it's due in June. I don't see a point to renewing it.
If Sean's right, which he will be, because he will have he'll have that ready. So Sean must know something. Are we not running with stick and no carrot? It's like Dublin. We've missed the education piece. There's loads of shops around Dublin Airport that sell drones, and loads of people live nearby. It's just a thing of geography. And they should have been out educating those people.
Well, what's a real shame, and someone showed it on one of the commercial groups. Someone bought a Mini 3 Pro, and it had the rules for several countries included, where not to fly. Now, the UK CAA used to give retailers these leaflets that were included. So when you bought a drone, you got your leaflet that tells you where to go to register, or why not to fly, and all that jazz, what apps to get and everything. Used to be double-sided, little A5 sheet. Now you don't get that. Yeah, flying with.
Well, the reason for that is now it's a 25-page sheet, and they change it every week, so they realise they couldn't afford to keep printing them.
Yeah, but even just a website, even just a double A5 saying go to this website, do not fly near airports on the other side, would have been great. Yes, they used to get it though included. That was the thing, Sean. That you used to, when you bought from Maplins or anywhere, you used to actually get a physical piece, because I used to get it. So it's, yeah.
When you went to Maplins, you got a physical piece. I don't think we want to know about
Physically,
that.
you got
That's
this
not.
place, leaflet. You used to be able to get
Leaflet. Oh, righto. No, I'd never, Johnny. I'd never give Sean a compliment.
I would say anyway. I don't have an issue with the police enforcing, because that's part of the issue.
So
There's not enough enforcement. What I have is an issue with is if there's lots of new legislation that we don't need. That's where the issues come about. But if there's genuine cases of people that have done something genuinely daft that need to answer, then it's not a bad thing, because it then sets an example out there, and then people that, because there are some people that, you know, get into drones and they think there are no consequences. Because I mean, I remember like the early cases. There was, I think Blackpool was one of the first ones, going down to Blackpool Tower.
Yes.
And there was a couple around there, and then they kind of stopped. So a lot of people came in and they didn't realize that actually. I think because obviously it was originally the CAA, and then when it went over to the police, I think for many years there wasn't actually that many cases. There was just the odd ones here and there, and people just didn't notice them. Well, at least with that guy, though he was with the hurricane, that's got very noticed. So it's hopefully got people thinking actually the laws that there will be enforced. And they think twice before they would do anything deliberately daft. I mean, I kind of hope that people would do that anyway, but we know there will always be exceptions to that. So if there is more cases that come through and people seem to have consequences, that in itself's not a bad thing if people keep to the rules that there. What is bad is when those, you know, it does concern me with the drone ID coming along that maybe someone thought, actually, we're going to make an effort to find issues, to bring to court, to justify this, and to help push it through. That concern me if someone's cynically thinking in that manner.
Yes.
Yes.
Cliff's comment there.
Yeah, I saw that.
Well, you know, you buy a drone, put an SD card, upload the latest 300-page document. In some ways, Dr. Quad, that's not a bad idea if you've got some good training and safety information to make sure that people get hold of it. Joe, yeah, I'm sure that Sean wants to do that as well. Yeah, Sean would be the sort of bloke that would have a Space 1999. I expect to see one in the background next time, Sean. Sorry.
There is a point with although it was said for comedy value, with Bruce for juggling chainsaws in the back garden, because it was something that I'd blogged about years ago. Just frustration that even going back to 2015 or maybe even before, with the way drones were being treated with the media, is when you go away and you start looking at accidents with anything else, normal everyday power tools, things we take for granted, there are huge amounts and serious injuries, and it just frustrates me that no one's in the least bit bothered about that. You know, about the most dangerous thing you could do in the UK is get up some ladders. You know, that's where you're going to end up killing yourself. And we're all able to buy ladders. We're all, put them on an even ground. Have no one standing there. Do it in gale force wind, and no one's going to say "oh" to you. And then it's I do a lot of DIYs, and I've got plenty of
looking at you, Rod Hull,
and some of them absolutely terrify me. But I can have a reciprocating saw there that could just easily take on my fingers.
Don't give them ideas. You probably find that if you fall off your ladder, you've broken several CAA regulations by the time you hit the ground.
If your feet come off the ladder and you are flying for them moments, then yes.
Yes. Yeah. Emu from an errant ladder. Yes. Rod Hull. God rest his soul. Mick's saying, what would have happened if that no term had been for a drone event and the hurricane had flown through the drone event? How would that look?
That's actually brought up something from this week. We should have probably got it as a video and uploaded it to this. Now we know we could do it, but Philip Rouse. He was at the air show, and he'd done a tweet with some video and what he'd actually found whilst he was out there. So he's at an air show. He's presenting the Hex Cube products, and they've got ADSB on there, and it's showing on the screen in Mission Planner, and none of the air traffic that was there at the air show even had the ADSB turned on, apart from 2 military craft that were just parked on the runway. So we have a problem where GA aircraft and new airliners are quite happy just not to have the ADSB turned on. Certainly that was what was shown in Australia. So it's like, how are we ever going to get to a point where we have this? Regulators are saying, well, we want all the airspace, everyone to be aware of everyone else. But there isn't this effort with GA. I think Philip had mentioned on here previously. Sorry, I'll let you go in a second about. But I think he mentioned you can actually buy like bulbs that fit in on your aircraft, and that puts in there. Yeah. So there isn't any excuse. There isn't actually necessarily an expensive retrofit for these things. There are actually solutions, but there's no pressure from regulators to say put on those solutions yet. On the drone industry, we just feel like we're under continual pressure to do this, do that, or the other.
So the reason why, Ian, is because manned aviation kicks up a little stink. In the UK, they did this. They kicked up a stink and went, but that costs so much money. I've got a £30,000 plane out there. You want me to spend £250 or £500 on an ADSB, and then you'll be able to see where I'm flying and just cutting across controlled airspace? Really? Oh, no, we won't do that. You take that back. You can't say that to us, the CIA. You're just being naughty and pesky. And
they don't have to. They don't have to fit those things because all the regulations in every country in the world says unmanned aerial aircraft must always give way to manned aircraft. So even if they're flying through without, and I likened it in my tweet thing too. It's kind of like blaming a pedestrian who was knocked down by a car driving at night on the footpath without its headlights on, and it's a pedestrian's fault. They should have got out of the way. I mean, seriously.
But general aviation in the UK went nah, and the CIA went, oh, okay, then we won't make you do it.
There's another one with an example of that as well, Mark. That frustrated me. It frustrated me because it was with Balpa, because as we're seeing the way they slung mud at the drone industry and always go safety, 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 and they'll do that. And then the moment anything's turned towards them that's safety related, they will fight it. So the one that I noticed was there was a pilot that was suicidal. So he plunked the plane down, he had passengers in. And so the regulator then said, we think there needs to be a check on mental health with pilots because we don't want that to happen again. And they go, oh, no, you're absolutely not doing that. Didn't want any single pilot to lose their job because they had potentially suicidal. So that's quite fine.
It's who's in whose back pocket.
Yeah.
Right.
And where's the dash cam?
Connections. I'm telling you, right? The rules are all about money and connections now. That's it.
Where's the airliner's dash cams? They'd say they see all these drones. We'll put a dash cam on the bloody airliner so we can see them too.
Well, I wish this is another thing. I wish we did have more video, or that videos sort of mandated at some point, because this would put a lot of it to bed as well. It's like let's see the video of these incidents. And the thing that frustrates me is you get, and again, I think this was some Balpa pilot doing good. Oh, we haven't got time to be messing about sorting out video and this. And then I'm like looking online, and every pilot's got a GoPro in the cockpit, selfies and all. And I'm thinking, sod off. I mean, there was one where he'd gone and took trouble of fastening the camera onto the bleeding cockpit wheels so he could get those effects and stuff outside, which I'm not sure you're probably even supposed to be doing.
Most planes actually have cameras either in the tail fin looking over the top of the aircraft, or even nose cameras now as well, and they could see. So they could just be recording that feed if they wanted to. It would be hard.
Put a better camera in there.
Yeah, I mean, you don't. you know, most modern planes have these, because when you sat there, you can actually look through the views on your camera as a passenger. But not only that, if there was a drone that was off the wing, why isn't there video or photo of it? Because that would make someone a lot of money on YouTube. There's 300 people sat behind that pilot. What do you do when you come into land? Most people I know got a camera.
Oh yeah, taking photos and video. Yeah.
Where is that video? It just, these pilots that go, oh, there's a drone. I'll tell you what, no, go to Specsavers. Hang on, Belper will object. What am I saying? What am I saying? Belper will object to saying send them to Specsavers.
I think we're definitely going into full-on rant mode.
Yeah,
here.
we are.
It's a traditional rant, isn't it? So we should probably run away and let these poor people go about their business, their normal, lawful business. And I think I'll let you end it, Bruce, just to make sure I don't stuff anything else up again.
I can stuff it up for you.
Yeah, you can stuff it up for me. So wherever we are in the world, thanks very much for being here. One day we'll have electricity again. Chaps, thank you. And I'm going to let Bruce press the button. Take care, everybody. Look after yourselves. Go for it, Bruce. Go for it.
3 times.